May 2023, we travelled to Ecuador to bird in 3 of the lodges of the wonderful San Jorge Magic Birding Circuit near Quito, with side trips to some other altitudinal habitats.
Welcome to paradise!
We stayed first at San Jorge de Quito Lodge, a picturesque former 18th century Jesuit monastery and hacienda, 3,150 metres above sea level, in the mountains overlooking Quito. Largest of the South American thrushes, great thrush, a common and conspicuous bird. And at the feeder, another couple of the more common birds, golden-bellied grosbeak and eared dove. The historic buildings themselves are fascinating, and the gardens provide a bountiful bird habitat for many different species. Hooded siskins are feeding in the salt in the old mud brick walls. A brilliantly coloured crimson-mantled woodpecker displaying well. Our first sighting of a distant red-crested cotinga. Streak-throated bush tyrant, the first of many flycatchers we were to see. Black flower piercer, foraging around the hummingbird feeders, using its distinctive hooked upturned bill to tear at the bottom of flowers for nectar. And at the feeders, the hummingbirds, our first sighting of this spectacular and enthralling family. We're completely dazzled by their shimmering brilliance, displaying the widest diversity of plumage colour among all birds, as they almost constantly dart and hover, with wings beating between 50 and 80 beats per second, giving them astonishing manoeuvrability, including, unique among birds, flying backwards. Large and aggressive, sparkling violet ears are attempting to dominate the feeders, but the smaller shining sunbeams are holding their own. With an average weight of 4 grams and a heartbeat of 20 beats per second, these little dynamos must be almost constantly feeding, taking in half their body weight in food per day. Hopping about on the ground is the more modestly coloured rufous-collared sparrow, a widespread and common species in Central and South America. Tyrian metaltail does indeed display a metallic sheen when the light hits, and males display a glittering green gorget. Without light, the metallic sheen is gone, and they appear completely dark. The tiny bee-like white-bellied woodstar favours red or orange tubular-shaped flowers, which often have nectar with the highest sugar content. Though tiny, they will aggressively defend these territories and are very useful pollinators. The male has a spectacular iridescent purple gorget and a stumpy tail. In striking contrast, the black-tailed train-bearer carries a tail that can be up to 4 times the length of its body when it's fully extended for courtship display. Below our bedroom window, a young male is feeding on a bottle brush. This is an amazing sight for Australians. Such an extraordinary, exotic-looking bird in such a familiar bush. Next morning, we visit Yanacocha Reserve, located on the western slope of volcano Pichincha, at an altitude of approximately 3,500 metres. This reserve protects several threatened species and gives us a chance to appreciate more of the mountainous beauty of Ecuador. It's also one of the sites used by the explorer and scientist Alexander von Humboldt and has an informative research centre. Above all, it's a wonderful place to watch birds. Greg's excited by the view and the sunshine. 2 female buff-winged star frontlets are first at the feeders, differentiated from the male by their rufous throats. They're a long-billed species of the high Andes in the Brilliance family. Attracted to the sugar water bowls are 2 more species of flower piercer, the spectacularly bright blue masked flower piercer and glossy flower piercer, slightly bigger than the black flower piercer we saw yesterday and with a distinctive silvery shoulder patch. Buff-winged star frontlets are easily identified by the conspicuous buff wing patches. The female has a rufous throat. A hummingbird's tongue goes in and out up to 20 times per second and operates like a pipette, using elastic energy stored at the base of the tongue to bring up the nectar. One of the largest hummingbirds, there are only 3 larger species, and also in the Brilliance family, is the magnificent and majestic great sapphire wing. The female has bright cinnamon underparts. Sword-billed hummingbird is unmistakable. Not only is it one of the largest hummingbirds, but it's the only bird where its beak is longer than its body, excluding the tail, and proportionate to size. It's the longest of all bird beaks. This has the advantage of enabling it to feed in very long, tubular flowers which other species can't access. However, the weight of the beak means it has to always perch in an upright position to balance, and it has to use its feet to preen and scratch. Wow, tanagers! A huge bird family comprising 4% of the world avian population. Most have the stunningly colourful, brilliant plumage displayed by these 2 species of mountain tanager. They're small to medium birds with omnivorous diets, and we're thrilled to have our first sighting. As the mist drifts across the mountain, we go further into the forest to where an ant pitter can be lured out of dense cover with mealworms. This enables marvellous views of a ground bird which is rarely seen, and then only for a brief moment on the dark forest floor. It stands thrush-like, tall and upright on long, strong legs, but has a stubby, pitta-like tail and is related to the antbirds. Its large eye fixed on the mealworms shows that it usually keeps to the shadows. After that amazing sighting, we head back to our original spot and find the fruit feeder has attracted a handsomely coloured yellow-breasted brushfinch. There are also plenty of hummingbirds around the feeder, some of which we're even beginning to recognise. It's interesting to observe the size difference between great sapphire wing and Tyrian metaltail. The shining sunbeam is living up to its name, displaying the rainbow of colours on its back. The Andean guan that George has heard calling most of the day has come in at last to the fruit feeders. It's an impressively large, mainly ground-feeding bird, and to see it this close, where we can observe its red eye and blue eye patch, is a rare treat. There's a new species of hummingbird at the feeder, golden-breasted puffleg. It's found in high elevation forests of the Andes in Ecuador and Colombia, and in the sunlight it's not hard to see why it's one of the brilliants family. The mist is increasing as the temperature drops, and as some of our favourites return for a late feed, it's time for us to leave. The next day we travel to Tandayapa EcoLodge at the much lower elevation of 1,700 metres, passing by the hummingbird statue in Nono. Shiny cowbird, a brood parasite, can be seen over much of South America, and tropical mockingbird is widespread over the north and east. Southern lapwing is also common and widespread throughout this region. As evening comes, we spot some roadside birds. A little flycatcher, white-crested Alana. A beautiful pearled tree runner. And lastly, the tiny raptor, American kestrel. Tandayapa Lodge is in the Tandayapa Valley, and the much lower elevation creates a warm and humid habitat. As dawn breaks, we visit the moth traps for the insect eaters. These brush finches forage in lower montane habitat on the edge of rainforests. Although widespread, this attractive little spinetail is usually difficult to see as it skulks in thickets and tangles at the edges of rainforests. A couple of tree trunk foragers. A wonderful display of the insect eaters. and even an ant shrike. A brief glimpse of a forest hummingbird, a hermit. Returning for breakfast, we spot black phoebe, a flycatcher which prefers to hunt from more open sites near water, and enjoying breakfast on the track is white-throated quail dove. An agouti has also been feeding. The view over the mountains and forests from the dining area is sensational, and there's a feast of birds as well as delicious meals. The fruit feeders have created a glorious tanager heaven for birders. It's hard to imagine a more colourful and captivating sight than this bird family feeding together. And we're surrounded by trees, the tops of which are on eye level for perfect viewing opportunities, like this euphonia, a bird that mimics the distress calls of other species while on its nest, so they fly in to drive off the danger. Joining the tanagers is red-headed barbet, which, like woodpeckers, builds its nest by carving out holes in trees. The sexes are distinctly dimorphic, but equally gorgeous. George has directed our gaze upwards to where the elegant swallow-tailed kite is soaring. Also cruising in the thermals is turkey vulture. Easy to see where it got its name when it lands. Wow, a spectacular, rare and iconic bird of the cloud forest, toucan barbet, and very likely a pair since the sex's plumage is very similar. Meanwhile, the hummingbirds are always busy entrancing us at the feeders, and we see plenty of new species in this different habitat. Another violet ear, distinguished from the sparkling by being smaller and lacking the purple belly. The display around the feeders is breathtaking and continues to stun with beauty when the violet-tailed sylph flies in. That tail. Gazing out again over the glorious view, we spot red-billed parrots. And while eating lunch, we're joined by a very handsome pair of crimson-rumped toucanets, an inquisitive species which likes to check out feeder activity. Next morning, the mist is drifting in. The cloud forest is living up to its name, but it's still not cold and the rain is gentle, so we drive to Amagusa to see some of the choco endemics. And the gentle rain is certainly not discouraging the birds. We're in another tanager heaven, with birds that are usually difficult to see right in front of us. Even the rare golden-collared honey creeper. Crimson-rumped toucanet investigating the action again. A flock of exquisite rose-faced parrots are giving unbelievably good views as they demolish bunches of low bananas. They usually stay high in the canopy. At the hummingbird feeders, there are exciting new species. Brown violet ear, the third species we've seen in this family. An amazing size discrepancy between the large velvet purple coronet and tiny green thorntail. The Empress Brilliant is even larger. We get another good look at the long gleaming tail of the violet-tailed sylph. Velvet purple coronet seems to display the whole luminescent range of blues, greens and purples. What a stunner! As we head home in the evening, there is a rather dark view of bronze-winged parrot, and in the last of the light is a wonderful sighting of a pair of golden-headed quetzal. Breakfast next morning and the tanager gang has turned up too. Roadside hawk flies in and then lets us know he's arrived. A beautiful rufous motmot joins us, but prefers to sit still, quiet and almost motionless. We've driven to a lek, where male cocks of the rock display for female attention. The hide is large and well positioned to give a great view of these bizarre-looking cotingas, whose beak is completely hidden by plumage. The courtship display consists of competitors perching in pairs or small groups to perform mock confrontational displays, which feature bowing, wing flapping, head bobbing, bill snapping, and bizarre squeaking and grunting calls. They're polyandrous, and the females do the rest, building a mud nest in a rocky outcrop and rearing the chicks themselves. Afterwards, we enjoy some hospitality and encounter some species which prefer open spaces. There's even a new species of hummingbird to observe, western emerald. In the afternoon, we visit a fast-flowing rocky river and first encounter another dapper little black phoebe. And there's our target bird, white-capped dipper, flicking its tail and hopping from rock to rock. These aquatic passerines are fascinating to watch. We've arrived to spend 3 days at the magnificent San Jorge EcoLodges in upper tropical rainforest at a lower elevation to Tandayapa. Birding in Ecuador is all about the elevation, which changes the habitat by increments. The feeders at the entrance are sparkling with hummingbirds, and we're starting to sort out the more familiar species. The feisty little Andean emerald isn't afraid to have a go at the much larger green-crowned brilliant. This is a really marvellous sight to get cracking views of hummingbirds. Our room too is amazing, huge and comfortable. And the main building is birding heaven, with observation platforms at different heights going up to 18 metres and putting us right in the forest canopy. As usual, it's surrounded by well-placed feeders where you can enjoy the birds even while dining. Our first manakin sighting. The name club-winged comes from the stiff feathers of the male, which it strikes together to produce a whistling in an amazing courtship display. And here's one of the stars, a toucan, pale mandibilled araucari. It loves bananas. Toucan's beaks are strong but lightweight. The surface is made of layers of bony keratin, and the interior is a foam made of bony fibres and drum-like membranes. Even so, this individual looks to have sustained damage to its lower mandible. There's very little chance of seeing these smaller species unless you're on eye level as we are. A slightly better, though still distant, view of bronze-winged parrot. We're lucky to see this rare Plumbeous hawk, threatened due to its limited range and habitat loss. The endemic Choco toucan. What a handsome bird. Relative to body size, toucan beaks are the biggest of any bird in the world. So now we've seen the longest sword-billed hummingbird and the biggest of avian beaks. Off to the early morning moth traps for the warblers and other low and ground-feeding species. The endemic Choco warbler. This attractive little ground-dwelling warbler is easy to see around the tracks here as it likes to be near water and there are plenty of streams around. It's conspicuous because of its tail flicking displaying the bright rump. Spotted nightingale thrush is a very shy, secretive bird that stays well hidden while foraging mainly on the ground of humid montane forests. It's difficult to see without the advantage of the lighting around the moth traps. Another small flycatcher with the large eyes typical of species which spend most of their time in the darkness of the dense forest undergrowth. On the track is broad-billed mot-mot. Like all hummingbirds, the very long straight bill of green-fronted lancebill is matched to a specific floral counterpart for ease of feeding. On the way down to Rio Blanco, we see some of the more common birds of open spaces. As its name suggests, masked water tyrant is found near streams or rivers and eats mainly small arthropods from the muddy banks. Walking along the riverside to see what we can spot. But rain has pretty much ended our birding, and we have to drive back today to Quito to be ready to visit Antisana tomorrow. Antisana Reserve is the High Sierra in the foothills of Antisana volcano, which reaches 4,500 metres above sea level. The reserve is a working farm grazed by sheep, which helps sustain our target bird, Andean Condor. A tiny member of the tyrant flycatcher family. and a strikingly handsome raptor of the high Andes. And then, even more imposing, the world's largest bird of prey, Andean Condor. It's a breathtaking sight as it soars around the cliff face, showing its enormous 3.3 metre wingspan. As we climb higher, we leave the tree line and see some of the amazing birds which inhabit this beautiful, remote, but barren and icy region. Lake Mica is a reservoir supplying Quito. Very distant views, but you have to stick to the tracks here. A very different grass wren to the ones we see in Australia. As we descend, there's a condor flying above. We've stopped for coffee and to check out the feeders. Giant hummingbird is the largest of all hummers with a wingspan of 21 centimetres, a great last bird for a wonderful trip